The Alberta government is planning to change the rules around how people in the province can vote. Bill 54 would overhaul the Elections Act by eliminating vouching for people, making recalls easier, and banning electronic vote tabulators. Drew Westwater is the former Deputy Chief Electoral Officer of Elections Alberta. If passed, this legislation would reverse some of the elections changes he oversaw. He joins us now. Good morning to you, Drew.
Good morning, Lauren. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing this. So what changes in this bill stand out to you?
Well, the biggest one for me is the banning of vote tabulators. That's something that's was not recommended by the Chief Electoral Officer. It will go back to the manual paper ballot count. For electors, that won't be a lot different because they'll still get a paper ballot. They'll put an X or a check mark in the voter's circle to the name of to the right of the candidate's name in their ballot, and they'll put it back in the ballot box instead of taking it to a vote tabulator machine. That'll take a little bit longer to vote using a paper ballot system in the polls than would be with vote tabulators. What it does do is increase costs of elections, which taxpayers pay for because there's increased staffing. There's increased costs of staffing because they have to work longer hours, and more polling locations are required to do that. Vote tabulators have been used in Canada since 1988 successfully, and on recounts have been proven to be very efficient and effective and accurate. So that's a surprise that came out of the.
Yeah, let's hang on this one for a minute. Are you aware of any evidence, I mean, Canadian or otherwise, that vote tabulators can't be trusted to count votes accurately?
They've been used successfully, as I said earlier, in Canada since 1988 across Canada. There were some issues with vote tabulators 20 years ago in Quebec where they didn't properly prepare the machines before the election. But other than that, since that time, there's never been any issues with vote tabulators being used in elections in Canada.
Now,
they've been successfully used in recounts as well and verifying the votes that were tabulated on election night.
You know, this is a reaction to some, or at least as I understand it, it's a reaction to some waning confidence in these electronic vote tabulators. And, you know, people's confidence in the system is important. Like, how do you deal with that part of it, where if there is waning confidence, it needs to be addressed one way or another?
Our surveys and Elections Alberta does surveys of electors after every election. They're very confident in the tabulation of the vote totals and the results that are reported by both tabulators and manually. There's been no feedback from electors from our surveys that have said that they're unhappy with the vote tabulators and they want them banned. That's
okay,
for sure.
Interesting. Solution looking for a problem, maybe. All right. Well, thank you for your perspective on that. So what's the significance of eliminating vouching at polling stations?
Well, it's a convenience that we've had for electors for a number of elections now, where an elector, you are required to provide identification when you come to a poll. You have to be a Canadian citizen, 18 years of age, and resident in the riding. But you also have to provide ID proving that when you show up at the poll. And sometimes electors come with family members or with friends. They're at the poll, and they didn't bring 2 pieces of ID with them. And what would happen then is we have to send them back before vouching. They have to go home, get their ID or get it out of the car, and then come back and poll and then line up again and vote. With vouching, your family member can say, well, that's my husband. I can vouch for him. I'm on the list. I'm a registered elector. And if you vouch for them, they can stay there. You fill out a form, they get their ballot, and they vote right away. They don't get sent away. A neighbor can do that for you, or a friend. It's a very convenient thing for people who don't have the proper ID with them at the poll. That's been eliminated now.
Now, this bill also lowers the requirement threshold for recall votes and referendums. Can you explain those changes and their significance?
Well, clearly the thresholds have been reduced for both recall and initiative to try and make it easier for those recall requests and initiative requests to be successful when they're presented for validation by Elections Alberta. Currently, you need 40% of the electors on the list to agree with you if you want to get a recall vote for a member of the legislature, which is a high threshold. They're reducing that now to 60% of the electors who voted. So it's a lower number that have to agree with you 60% of the people who voted for that person have to agree that it's time to recall them. We're not happy with them. Whereas before it was 40% of all the electors on the list, which was a higher threshold. For initiatives themselves, it's a standardized 10% of electors.
What are we talking about when we say initiatives?
That can be for a constitutional initiative or a policy initiative. They don't like a policy the government's introduced, or they don't like if they don't like an initiative on I don't know, vaccinations or something, and they want an initiative called about that. They can sign a petition, get 10% of the electors to agree to it, and that initiative would be approved. So that's an example of something like that.
Okay, interesting. So how do you think these lower thresholds will affect, our Alberta democracy here?
Well, Lauren, it's with citizens' initiatives were brought in so the citizens can have a say after the election or with government policy to say, we're not happy with that and we want to do something about it. They've had them in BC for a number of years, and a number of them have been attempted. I don't think any of them have been successful to this point because of the high thresholds. So I guess Alberta's looked at that and said, we have the same initiatives available here. We want to lower the threshold to give them more chance of being successful, so citizens have more opportunity to be successful in getting a lower threshold of people to agree with them that it's necessary and for them to go forward.
So, okay, let's get back to sort of the higher elevation here on this overhaul of the Elections Act. Do you think, en masse, I mean, there's this change. It'll cost more to run elections. Anyway, the details are significant and the changes are many in a way. Do you think this will make Alberta elections run better?
The election process itself will cost more. The results reporting will be slower. It's harder you need more people to work in the polls with a manual count of elections. It's still a paper ballot. It still will be counted, and the results, so the integrity of the process is there, and the results will be there. It'll just take longer and cost more.